Live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our XP series. Usually in our experience series sessions, we have talked a lot about mobile app testing, web app testing. We have talked a lot about automation testing and general quality engineering in general. But we have really not talked about one very important digital content platform. Like it's extremely important in today's world. Even though, I think this would be the one platform that you would be using every day, but we really talk about it. We really never talked about it on XPCs. So I'm talking about smart TVs and the apps that goes with these smart TVs. Now, TV apps like Netflix, Prime, you guys have already heard about it, have been using it. They are kind of an integral part of our daily lives. But unlike web or mobile application, these apps come with a very unique challenges due to the diverse both hardware and software ecosystem of these devices. It's like the age of Internet Explorer all over again. A lot of incompatibilities in between, and there's a lot of complexities that arise specifically in building up a robust test automation framework, specifically for Apple TV, for Roku, for different type of Android and different type of Android TV devices as well. So in today's session, joining me today is Martin Tyler. Martin is the head of quality engineering at FX Digital. Now, FX Digital is a digital transformation agency that has focused mainly on building smart TV apps for platforms like Discovery and Eurosport. And FX Digital is one of those platforms that is tackling the challenge of transforming quality engineering for TV apps, specifically across automation of the TV apps. And Martin, has more than a decade of experience specifically for working for satellite companies and even for FX Digital. And he's going to share with us how the FX Digital is building state-of-the-art vision-based test frameworks for smart TV devices. So first of all, Martin, thanks for joining us today over the
Thanks
session.
so much for having me. Yes, it's really great to be on the podcast.
And this is really exciting for us as well, because as I said, this is something that we rarely talk about, but this is something pretty, everybody consumes a lot of content across smart TV devices, including for like apps like Netflix, and they are doing billions of dollars. And we never really think about in how the engineering of building these kind of devices go in the back end. So let's start with that specific thing in purpose. Let's talk about Martin's experience beforehand. I know we have worked in platforms like automotive industries and aviation industries, building apps for them. So how have you adopted your experience in working in these very diverse industries, and then use that experience in building TV apps and testing of those TV apps? So what were the key factors when you were thinking about building a robust framework for TV app testing that you took from your past experiences?
Well, I think one of the really big ones, the first one, was that I came from a QA background, not a dev background. So that really helped me understand that the challenges that the QAs are facing. So when we were building everything, we were building it with the QA in mind. You mentioned that I was involved in product development in aviation, where we were developing like car electronics, and then later in a company doing in-flight Wi-Fi. And both of those things are quite difficult to automate. So I kind of had seen how those have been automated, worked on some of that automation myself. So I kind of had that experience of like how to automate the unautomatable, I guess. And I think people normally they listen to my experience and they go, "Oh, they must have been really hard, aviation and automotive, to automate those things." But actually, EVs are much more difficult because they're super locked down. The companies don't want you to be able to get the information necessarily off them, not to stop you from automating, but they're just worried you're going to steal the content, right? So they're quite locked down. So we had to really understand how to get the information off of those devices in the first place before we even think about any of the automation. So that's one of the big challenges, and I think one of the things that I learned from my previous experience.
So actually doing a very deep dive into the hardware of the TV. So in fact, I will say this is the first experience that you already had, that it's not just the software side of things. You also have to look at holistically how the tooling can be built over the top on the available hardware so that you get best the logs, results, and everything out of it to actually understand the quality of application. So that's a pretty important learning, I'll say. And of course, this would be a pretty big challenge considering the diverse ecosystem of the TV app devices as well, right? So there's an Apple TV. I'm quite sure those guys would be they would have pretty much locked down all of their hardware and anything that you can get out of it. And things like Android TV, Roku, Amazon Prime Stick, like there is so many different devices. So how do you account for that? Different operating systems, screen sizes, manufacturers?
So yeah, there is lots of different devices, but I think the ones you've mentioned there are actually relatively easy to automate on. So anything with
really?
like Android and with tvOS, they're essentially like mobile phones, really. So you can kind of treat them the same way. You can use like Appium, and you can get the information off them quite easily. When you start to look at like Samsung TVs, LG TVs, like we get some like really weird and wonderful boxes from around the world, like Fetch, which is a set-top box in Australia, Comcast boxes out of the US, Sky boxes in the UK. Now that's when the real challenge starts, because the web drivers aren't necessarily available, and where the web drivers are available for those devices, they often can't get screenshots from the devices. And because we're doing everything vision based, we need to be able to get those screenshots off of the devices. So yeah, that's kind of like the first challenge, really. In terms of like the resolution, we test everything from the design. So what we're doing is taking a screenshot of the application as it's on the real device, and then we're taking a screenshot from the designs of the specific element. So not the entire page, we're just looking for a specific element, much like you would do like traditionally you'd look for like an XPath of an element or an ID of an element. We use the image as like the identifier. And then our what we call our image comparison API, that will return the location of that element. It will return like the percentage match. So we have a threshold that we work to. We don't work to 100% because we don't want really flaky test cases, and humans can't tell it's if it's a couple of pixels out, it's not really gonna make any kind of difference to you. So yeah, that's how that works, and we scale everything up or down to 1080 because that's what our designs are done in. So that's how we handle those different screen resolution sizes.
So it's basically a big, robust set of frameworks around visual regression testing. So
everything is done completely with vision based, and the reason that we do that is FX Digital use a framework called Lightning.js, and that we don't just use that, but we use that a lot, and that makes use of the GPU rather than the CPU. So it uses WebGL under the hood, which is basically a language that renders images on your GPU, and you don't get the DOM, so you can't interrogate the DOM like you would traditionally. So that's why we had to go down this visual route. But also our dev team, much like we're not scared of new technologies, our dev team aren't scared of new technologies. So we wanted to build a framework that it doesn't matter what underlying technology was being used. We wanted it just to be completely agnostic. So that's where the visual stuff came in. And then actually it's really kind of like we started off doing it for the WebGL reasons, but actually when we've started to use this in practice, it just makes so much more sense, because that's how a user's actually using the device. They're not looking into the DOM, they are looking at the screen and looking at what's on there. We've seen issues like, for example, a shader on a particular skybox was behaving slightly differently because every one of these devices, every single model year, is generally pinned to a different version of browser. So you've got lots of different browsers, and people don't throw their TV devices away. They keep them for 6-7 years, much longer than you would for a mobile phone. So we're testing against many different versions of these browsers, and this particular Sky device, the shader was behaving differently to all the other ones. Now, if we'd have been using traditional automation, we would have gone, oh, that element is there, that exists, and it would have been absolutely true. It would have existed. But because the shader was behaving differently, we could see that it actually wasn't as per the designs just on that particular box. All the other ones were behaving as expected.
Nice. So that's a completely very different approach. So we do a lot of browser testing. We know people are doing a lot of browser testing, mobile device testing, and visual regression testing is something that is also a part of ecosystem. People doing a lot, but taking this as so usually visual regression testing is a second approach. They start with DOM to DOM testing. They do more of a browser testing, and then go on to let's also do a visual regression approach. But you did it the other way around. The visual elements came first, right? That's pretty interesting. So let's talk about maintenance of such a system. So you mentioned a few challenges, but when I have to really scale this up, when I have to really scale this across different devices, different type of operating systems, so how is this scale maintained? And specifically when the company that you're working for, that is FX Digital, as their portfolio keeps growing, how's that scale is being maintained?
Yeah, it was a huge challenge. We went from doing completely manual testing to we run around 300,000 automated test cases a month now, always on real devices. And yeah, there was lots of challenges to getting it to that point. We started off running everything on a Mac Mini, which soon ran out of capacity. We'd built this framework from the ground up, so there was lots of course, with any piece of software, right, there was bugs in that in the first place. So we had this process that we went through with the QA team at first, where we would sit with them and we would train them, because they were all manual QAs, right, or a lot of them didn't have necessarily automation experience. Sat with them, explained like how things work, but also found bugs in the framework, and fixed those over time. I'm happy to say that we're in a much better position now. We host a lot of our microservices on the cloud, and we're able to scale horizontally with that. So we're able to scale up those services. I checked just before I came on, actually, our image comparison API had around 200,000 API calls last night. So we've kind of learned how to build those really robust microservices as well. Our framework itself is completely containerized, so it all runs in Docker. So we have one Docker container per device that's running. In our lab, I think we're up to around 50 or 60 devices now, so it's quite a few. And we've invested heavily into high-end servers on premises, because the devices are on premises, and if you have a WebDriver running in the cloud, for example, you can imagine that's a bit of a recipe for disaster if your internet connection goes down for a few seconds. So yeah, we've really spent a really long time making sure that is really well maintained. Of course, documentation. You can't really build a piece of software this big and then expect to be able to scale the team without really good documentation. And finally, always willing to try new tech, try new ways of doing things. We're not stuck in our ways. We're always looking for like a better process of doing things. We're happy to rewrite things. Like a few months ago, we rewrote our image comparison API, for example. It was we'd written everything in JavaScript and wasn't necessarily the best way for that API, so we rewrote that in Python. We're always looking at ways of optimizing, basically.
So how many devices you guys have in your, let's say, home office, where you have, let's say, thousands of different TVs, hundreds of different TVs, different type of mobile device, like different type of set-top box? You must be have, let's say.
I mean, in the company, I don't know the exact numbers. It's definitely more than 200, but that was a number that was taken a couple of years ago. So it's definitely way beyond that. And then in terms of the lab, maybe we can share some photos with you, and you can show the viewers that. But yeah, we've got, I think, about 50 or 60 devices, and we're always adding more. We've just taken on a really big new project, and I've just been handed a huge list of devices, lots of Android ones, lots of Samsung ones. So yeah, looking forward to getting those into the lab. We actually, a few months ago, moved offices, because we'd run out of space. We kind of inherited this little room at the back of our office, and one of the big reasons for the company moving in the end was that the lab just wasn't big enough. It wasn't the only reason, but that was a big reason. And now, so we've got a really huge space where we can have lots of devices in there. Again, having and I get you guys, I'm sure will know this very well, but having all those devices on premises is a real challenge. Heat, for example, TVs kick off a lot of heat. Air cons, as we've learned, are air cons not necessarily 100% reliable. We have had problems with that going over, so we've got like fall over aircon units now that we're installing. We've invested heavily into our network infrastructure to have that many devices online streaming at the same time. So yeah, the list is endless, really, of all the things that we've done. Other things as well, like they can be smaller things as well. Like for example, if you want to quickly plug into a set-top box device, it was getting a bit cumbersome dragging a TV over, plugging it in the back. So we've got a TV mounted on the wall now with like a wireless HDMI sender, and we're able to just plug that in anywhere in the lab. Little things like that make the maintenance of such a system, much better. It may sound small, but once you start adding lots of those little things up, you really reduce the amount of time that you have to maintain each device, and it makes it much more scalable.
So I now really know who to call when I have to buy my next smart TV, right? So that would be you, the first guy.
We've probably got a spare one.
Yeah, so moving on, let's talk about performance. So I'm quite sure for a very end user perspective based applications, performance is one of the key factors that you guys would be checking. So for those so many diverse devices, specifically, as you mentioned, you were working for a platform that is based out of Australia. So how are you testing for performance specifically on different devices and on different networks to ensure a seamless digital experience for all the end users?
So yeah, I think that's a really good question, because a lot of the devices that we work with at FX Digital are really low performance. That seems to be our kind of speciality. We do other stuff. We've built Apple TV apps and Android apps as well. But yeah, I think customers come to us a lot of the time because of our expertise for those really low end devices. And we've developed a few different methods of measuring those. So we measure a metric called TTMU, which is time to minimum usability. And we actually built an algorithm that does that completely using vision. Again, that's what we tend to try and lean towards. So what that does, it works with set-top boxes, actually, not with TVs, because we can't get video feeds from them. But it will measure the time until the app has completely loaded, basically, and we can measure that then on a daily basis to see trends. We take memory consumption from devices where we can, and other metrics as well. It's important to note, I think, it's not possible to get that information from absolutely everything. You can't get that off every other device. If the APIs simply aren't there, it makes it impossible. But we know from experience that if you measure it on as many devices as you can, the devices that you don't measure it on, you can infer that from those other measurements. So we're looking at trends really over time on the devices that we can measure it from, and that has served us really well in making some really performant devices for our customers.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, and it's also important for device manufacturers to include those kind of capabilities, as you mentioned, APIs and stuff, to actually pull off the data and records from the device during the testing phase.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there is a new technology that's being released, or a new standard that's being released, that's being pushed by a few of the big players, called a device automation bus, which hopefully will simplify getting information off of smart TVs. But of course, people, like I said earlier, people aren't replacing those devices, so we're still going to have probably 6, maybe even more years where even if it was released tomorrow on every single device, we'd still have 6 years of problems ahead of us. So yeah,
Another thing that I found really interesting. So you mentioned a metric called time to minimum usability, right? If I'm not wrong. So how you are mapping that through a visual base? Are you taking, let's say, screenshots after every milliseconds and then comparing them to a minimal viable rendering or something like that?
Yeah, we take a recording of the application starting up, and then we analyze that recording. So it goes through kind of various stages. If you think about how an application loads, like a smart, if you think about how an OTT application loads, you get like a splash screen generally, and then you get when it actually loads onto the landing page, you get a page with lots of colors, and we can detect the fact that there's lots of colors on the page and then no movement, and then from there we know that the application is fully loaded. And we've tested this across a variety of applications that we develop, and also ones that are just freely available, and it works really nicely. I think that's the other nice thing though about the fact that we've built all this technology from the ground up. We can kind of like modify it for for different customers as we see fit as well.
Right. So this is another interesting application. So now when I'm thinking aloud in this regard, how OTT apps opens up. So there is a tada of Netflix, and then it opens up the application. So how do you account for things like personalization in an OTT application? So whenever something opens, the top screen is usually very dependent upon what kind of things you have watched, or location, and all of those things. Like there would be a lot of personalized information, because a lot of changes because of the personalized information that would be coming on the home screen. Like how do you account for that?
So yeah, we know what to expect in terms of the username. That's all kind of accounted for. In terms of the information coming from the CMS, that's always going to change. Certain things we don't automate because, and I think that's really a really good point to drive home. Automation is never going to replace manual testing completely. There's always going to be a place for manual testing as well. And if it takes longer to automate it than to manually test it, actually you're better to manually test it. So yeah, a lot of the stuff that maybe is changing on a super regular basis, we would just test manually.
Awesome. That definitely makes sense. So now let's switching gears a little bit. Let's talk about the things that are something that everybody is talking about. In fact, right now is AI. So AI, ML, all these models, new technologies, ChatGPT, generative AI, and even cognitive AI-based features. They are doing a lot, specifically in fields around mobile and web app testing. So how's that impacting the world of TV apps? So how do you see the role of AI ML in the TV app testing, and what are the challenges specifically, challenges and opportunities that you see using these technologies in the future?
So our vision algorithm is all machine learning based. So we use machine learning quite extensively. AI, we are starting to use that. So one thing that we're quite passionate about at FX is not just automating the testing, but automating like the phases of testing. So writing the test cases, analyzing the test cases, and maintaining them as well. So we've got quite a long roadmap based around how we're going to use AI in that. At the moment, we've started working on a AI algorithm that is able to write test cases. So our framework has a number of predefined steps that the QA team can use. They can also go out and make their own custom steps, but that's kind of another story. But so we've given an AI model the steps that our framework can use, and then we're writing some code that will actually write those test cases. So the idea being, eventually we'll be able to hook that up to a web driver and allow the AI to crawl through all the different screens on the application, and then write test cases based on the screenshots that it takes. That will be very useful when we inherit an application, maybe that's not being built from the ground up by us. Yeah, where we want to automate lots of different, like an application that's been built already. And then we're looking at other ways of using AI as well, like analyzing those test cases. We'll always have that human element, that human touch, because I think it's really important to still have that. But to be able to look at the test case and go, where the dream really is, a QA is able to look at the results and go, oh, actually, no, that's that's the correct behavior, and the test case just then updates itself. So we've got that in our roadmap as well. So kind of like being able to analyze and maintain that using AI.
So this is again a very visual first way to do the testing. So instead of
Yeah,
just
exactly. Yeah, and I think it's probably good to mention as well that we have started to offer our test automation services not just as part of our application building, but to other companies as well. So yeah, that's where really, if they come to us with an app on lots of different devices that they've made, and we can very quickly write the test cases using AI for that, you can imagine that could become quite powerful for them.
Yeah, that's definitely a very unique approach. In fact, our the product that we recently came out with, that was Kane AI. It's again a AI-based test authoring agent. So we also focused on the visual element first, finding out the visual element, like finding out the elements visually rather than through locators or DOM elements. So that has helped us really scale up the application. So we have 4 or 5 more minutes. So let's talk about like what are the core learnings that you have in building up this enormous new innovative framework, that advice that you will give to other companies, other team members who are building up similar kind of frameworks?
So I think the biggest lesson that I learned is if you don't already have automation in your organization, don't underestimate the difficulty of changing a process in a business. We kind of really focused on like the QA team and like how we could help them. And they loved it. They were on board with it from day one. But like understandably, like other departments maybe weren't so up for it. Like for example, the project management team, you're asking the team to do more work, right? Yeah, and they're trying to get a project across the line, and you're trying to essentially give them more work to do. So you really need to like educate everyone in the business about the benefits of test automation. I think we really underestimated how difficult. But we underestimated that we even needed to do it in the first place, and then we underestimated how difficult it would be to like kind of change the process. I remember actually one day we did like lots of different of these activities, like training people around the business, and we did lots of work. As I said earlier, like scaling up our services, and one day walking into the office and seeing like the QA team with a load of with the rest of the project team, and having automation logs up in one of our meeting rooms, was like, wow, we've actually done this, which is really great. So yeah, for anyone thinking about going from manual to test automation, don't underestimate that. In terms of like TV apps specifically, don't underestimate the difficulty of getting info from these devices. Like they're locked down. They're not definitely not designed for automation. I don't think anyone's even necessarily thought about automating on these devices when they've been designing them anyway. So we had to build a lot of the web drivers from the ground up, and we've developed lots of kind of ways and methods of doing that. Having a lab with devices is super hard. Like as I'm sure you guys know firsthand as well, right? If you don't have to have the devices in your building, then just don't do it, because that on its own is a massive learning curve. Like how you store the devices, how you keep things cool, how you all the networking around that as well is really super difficult. So I think they're some of the real key lessons that I've learned. I could probably carry on talking to you all day about all the things we've learned. And I think that the biggest lesson that we've learned as well is that people and process are much more important than the technology. When we initially built this technology, we thought, oh, there you go to the QA team, we'll just hand it over to you and it'll be fine. That's not the case. Like you need the people to be trained, you need the process built around the test automation before it really starts making like an impact on the business, really.
Nice. And we're really hit on the mark. So just thanks for Martin for taking the time out, walking us through your unique experience of building up TV apps. And I'm quite sure it has been a pleasurable experience for you as well, both talking with me and building up the whole framework for FX Digital. So again, thanks for taking the time out and joining us for the show today.
It's been great. Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. So this session, again, as I said, this would be available on over YouTube. Feel free to subscribe to our platform to get more such sessions on your inbox. I will also leave Martin's social info below. So if you want to ask any questions, feel free to add in the YouTube comments or reach out to Martin directly. Maybe he will be able to help out. Again, thanks everyone for joining us today. Until next time for our next session. Happy testing.